So to begin with, I would like to thank David Ndagia for his kind invitation. I might say a few words about this province of Khurāsān-e Raḍavī. It has been created in 2004. It's a subdivision of Khorasan, of the historical Khorasan. What is interesting in this region is that we have a substantial Sunni population, although we don't have official statistics, but it's probably in cities like Taibad, for example, here, or Khaf, it's probably we probably have 70% of the population which is Sunni and not Shia. Another contextual element which is important to remind, as my colleague Stéphane Dudouineau showed, recently there has been a Sunni revival in this region over the 20th century, which was due to two factors mainly. Although, of course, it's a complicated process, but two factors can be highlighted. It's the activism by clerics or by ulamas coming from Afghanistan and the Indian subcontinent as early as the 1930s. And from the 1940s, Deobandis, ulama, among these clerics who preached the Deobandi school in Khurāsān-e Raḍavī. And the second factor is, of course, the demography, with, for example, the influx of many Afghan refugees in the 1980s for obvious reasons. So this created a Sunni, what Stéphane Dudouineau calls a Sunni revival, both in Khorasan and Sistan-Balochistan region. What I'm going to try to show is that there is perhaps in the wake of this Sunni revival, a Sufi revival, but which occurred much later, I believe, in the region. I think it can be dated to the 1990s, so very recently, and not before, which is due to the activity of new generations of masters, of sheikhs, coming from or trained in the bordering regions, that is Afghanistan, Pakistan, Balochistan, Iran's Balochistan, and even Iran's Kurdistan. So it's not a neighboring region, but it's a region in Iran. And I would like to show you a second map. You have this more regional contextualized presentation of Khorasan with the neighboring region, and in particular Herat, that I will talk about, Zahedan, Saravan, which are important cities in Balochistan. Okay, as we all know, there are, of course, there's a long tradition of Sufism in Khorasan, and particularly in the medieval period and the Timurid period, of course. Among the most famous sheikhs from this region, which are still active today as a Sufi places of pilgrimage, and we just heard about pilgrimage. In Tajikistan, there are also, of course, places of pilgrimage in Khurāsān-e Raḍavī, and I think particularly of Ahmad-e-Jam and his Uvaisi disciple Zainaldin Taibadi, and both are very well kept mausoleum shrines today in Khorasan. But as far as I can tell, there is no Sufi activity in the strict sense of the Sufi activities, not saint veneration, but Sufi activities in this on these shrines, as far as I know. If we have to present a landscape of the Sufi orders, shrines, and lodges of Khurāsān-e Raḍavī, there are three main orders, that is the Naqshbandiyya, the Qadiriyya, and the Chishti. So I'm going to detail each one. Interestingly, the traditional Sufi Naqshbandi authorities of Khurāsān-e Raḍavī are no longer active as Sufi authorities. As I said, the caretaker of the shrines are just caretaker of the shrines of Ahmad-e-Jam and Zainaldin Taibadi, and they are no longer Sufi sheikhs per se. They don't train these disciples, they don't initiate disciples, and they don't organize zikr or sama sessions. Although we have these old families, for example, there is an Akhrari family, or they claim to be, descendants of Khoja Ubaidullah Akhdar, the famous Naqshbandi 15th century Sheikh, through the figure of Sheikh Sufi Akhrari Rudi, who died in 1653. Whatever the reality of this origin, it's the Akhrari represents a family of religious authority today in the city of Khaf, with, for example, the Imam Juma, that is the leader of the congregational prayer, which is transmitted from fathers to son in the Akhrari family. So today it's Sadruddin Akhrari. So, but he's not a Sufi. He's the leader of the prayer. But his brother is certain Muhammad Akhrari, and interestingly, who was born, so he's still alive, who was born in 1965. He's not a Sufi either, but he's a mystical poet who authored the Divan of Poetry, which is relatively well known in the region. Another interesting figure is Ahmad Nakhl Ahmadi, who is now the director of the seminary of Turbat-e-Jam, another important city of Khorasan, who comes from Sufi lineage, which from his father, Fakhraddin Ahmadi, who belonged to the Ghulam Ali Shah Dehlavi's sub-lineage of the Naqshbandiyya Mujaddidiyya. But again, today, this Ahmad Nakhl Ahmadi has no Sufi activity. He comes from a Sufi background, or Sufi family, but he's a director of a religious Sunni seminary. And the last figure of the traditional authorities of the region is Shams al-Haq Mujaddidi, who died in 1970, who was affiliated to a very important lineage for the history of the Naqshbandiyya and Khurāsān-e Raḍavī, the lineage of Shah Wali Allah Khurāsāni. I will show you a diagram after that, which gives you maybe a more clear picture of these silsilas and shajaras. But again, Shams al-Haq Mujaddidi, who was located in Taibad and who died in 1970, had apparently no successors and no deputies, no khalifa, to continue the preaching of and the development of the Naqshbandi Mujaddidi branches in Khorasan. Today, speaking about the contemporary Khorasan, the most active Naqshbandi Mujaddidi branch is that of Jalal al-Din Fiqhi Saljuki, and of his grandson, now he's the current master, Shams al-Din Fiqhi Saljuki. So these are just the books published by Muhammad Akhrari Rudi and the Divan of Sheikh Sufi Khwafi, but I have no time to detail this. But these show you the intellectual activity, but no Sufi activity of these traditional authorities. So I was speaking about the diagram. This is the relatively complicated, but actually simplified silsila trees of current Naqshbandi Mujaddidis. And as I was saying, the current most important leader of the Naqshbandiyya in the region is Shams al-Din Fiqhi Saljuki, who comes from the lineage of Shah Wali Allah Khurāsāni, as you can see here. His grandfather, so Jalal al-Din Fiqhi Saljuki, was originated from Turbat-e-Jam. He went to Herat to be initiated by Haji Muhammad Anwar Shah Porchamani, a disciple of Shah Wali Allah Khurāsāni. And he then transmitted the Khilafat, the deputyship, to his grandson, Shams al-Din Fiqhi Saljuki. It was an indirect transmission since he died before. But the interesting thing with Shams al-Din Saljuki, it's not so much this hereditary legitimacy given by his grandfather, than the fact that he has been educated in Balochistan, not in Khorasan, in a madrasa in Balochistan, and met there another master, who is Muhammad Umar Sarbazi from Sarbaz in Balochistan, the region of Sistan Balochistan, who died in 2007. And in fact, the real master of Shams al-Din Fiqh Seljuki was this Muhammad Umar Sarbazi, who initiated him and who later appointed him as his deputy for the region of Khorasan. So that's, and here you can see a picture of Muhammad Umar Sarbazi, who once again he died in 2007. And one of his writings, the Khurāsān-e which is a sort of digest about Sufism, and which is a very popular, quite popular book today among Sufis in Khorasan, which is written in Persian. And Sarbazi himself is a very important figure for both Balochistan and Khorasan region. I'm not sure I have time to detail his biography, but to be very brief, so he's from Sarbaz in Balochistan. He was deputy of Shah Waliullah Khorasani, as I said. He studied in Karachi with Deobandi school, and that's a very important point. And then he returned to Balochistan to struggle against heretic tendencies and to preach the Naqshbandiyya Mujadidiyya with a strong Deobandi influence. And he is the founder of the Manba al-Ulum Madrasa in Salavan, which attracted and still attracts many students in Balochistan. As for his representative, Seljuki initiates disciples. It performs zikr in two cities, in Taibad and Turbat-e-Jam. And in Taibad, for example, this zikr takes place at the mosque Khalil al-Rahman, and you have a picture here, on the first Thursday of each month. And it's a very typical zikri khufi, silent zikr, which is performed each week in this mosque under the direction, the supervision of Seljuki. And it lasts. It starts after the afternoon prayer, and this lasts until the sunrise. So it's a whole zikr performance all night long, with session of zikr khufi, with the head covered, initiation to disciple with bay'ah, training of the lataif, subtle points of the body, and of course session of sorbat, of discussion between the sheikh and the murid. And there are approximately between 30 to 40 people participating to this each week to this zikr. So it's one of the most important Sufi activities by Naqshbandis in this region. I have photos and videos of the zikr and the performance, but I apologize, I'm not allowed to show them online. So we stay at the entrance of places. I'm sorry for that, but I think I will be able to publish this picture of some of them. Okay. So the second important Sufi order today in Khorasan is the Qadiriyya, with three important, well, there is only one very important, but the two first names, Hajj Anwar Hashimi Zambili and Abdel Jalil Qadiri, are relatively important figures, but symbolically. They don't represent large groups. And for the second one, Abdel Jalil Qadiri, he does not even have a Sufi group himself. So that's just a picture of Hajj Anwar Hashimi Zambili, who is still alive. He's around 70 years old, I think. He's a Kurdish sheikh who developed this branch. I don't know exactly how. Actually, I don't have, I had very difficulties to find details about how he developed this branch of the Qadiriyya since the 1990s in this region, but it exists. It's a small group performing loud zikr using daf, etc. each Friday evening in a private house in Taibad. So they have no lodge and no mosque. It seems to be a very small group. As for the second figure, Abdel Jalil Qadiri, who is about 50 years old, he's actually a high school teacher today, with no Sufi circle around him, but he comes from Qadiri lineage, as is shown by this document, which is a shajara, long shajara name of his family, which has been completed in 1919. So it comes from an old Qadiri family, which developed as a Qadiri order during the preaching of Ahmad Sharaf al-Din Qadiri, who died in 1917. So today, it's no longer an active Qadiri order, it's a family, mostly, with this memory of an old Qadiri lineage, an old hereditary lineage. And in addition to this, there are also the possessors of relics, or supposed relics of the prophets, prophet's hair and fragment of curtain of Kaaba. Both have been brought according to the narratives of the family, within the family, by Sharaf al-Din Qadiri in the beginning of the 20th century. But again, this is not an active Qadiri group. The Qadiriyya really revived, I think, in Khurāsān-e Raḍavī, thanks to the efforts of this Sheikh, Abbas Riza'i. And you see this picture, who was born in 1938 in Iran's Kurdistan, who was initiated both to the Naqshbandiyya and Qadiriyya, and who has been appointed as a teacher in Mashhad, and then moved to Taibad, and had the possibility to open in 1994 and 1995, so quite recently, lodges in the city of Taibad and Sengon, which is located in the south of Khaf. And these are very active. Both are very active Qadiri lodges. They exist since about 25 years now. They are funded by disciples. They are entire institutions with courtyard, ablution room, kitchen, etc. So they are fully organized. And they have, they organize each Thursday evening loud zikr with about 30, 40 people participating. I can show you the entrance. Again, we will stay at the entrance of the Khanqa, but you can see the inscription, Khanqa Hazrat Haji Khalifa Abbas Riza'i. Again, I have pictures and videos, but I cannot show them now. It's a loud zikr with music, singing and screaming in session of 1 hour and 1 hour and 30, followed by meals until sunrise. So it's again.
You can sum up soon, that would be very helpful.
Okay, sure. Okay, so I'm switching to the last, and it will be shorter. The last Sufi order represented in Khorasan, it's the Chishtiya, which is mainly active in Taibad, thanks to one Sufi sheikh, who is called Nasir Shirin Kam, who is born in 1962. And you can see his silsila on the screen. It comes from a well-known silsila of the Chishtiya. It's the Chishtiya Imdadiyya, which takes his name from Haji Imdadullah, who was a Chishti and Deobandi important thinker, and who is at the origin of this branch of the Chishtiya. And this branch is now the major representative of the Chishtiya in the region, far beyond the other ones. And interestingly, and I would like to stop here, interestingly, due to the influence of the Deobandi teachings, which is surprising for Chishtiya, it's not unique, but it's surprising, they no longer practice music and sama. So it's a very, so they perform a zikr also, but it's sometimes they call it half loud or half silent, so which is a very particular sort of zikr, but which is very different than the usual Chishtiya that we find even in Balochistan, where there can be sama. It's not the case here. So just a word of conclusion. I think given this very quick and sketchy presentation, I think we can speak of a Sufi revival in Khurāsān-e Raḍavī, but this recent process remains fragile and seems limited to a small part of the Sunni population. It's not massive at all. And what is interesting, I think, it's the process itself more than the results. Since it is due, I try to show that it is due to trans-regional Sufi networks, and also to the impact of Deobandi schools in this region of Iran. Thank you very much.